Welcome everyone to the Wilmette Institute's regular webinar series, which has as its purpose to highlight the immense diversity of the Baha'i teachings and the ways they contribute to the contemporary world, particularly to the prevailing discourses of society. Today, we will turn to the role of religion in society, and particularly the role of religious scholarship. And in this particular case, we have a fascinating presentation about Bahá'u'llah's tablet to Pope Pius IX. And we think that that will be a very illuminating way to explore this topic of religious leadership. Turning now to the speaker, Shahrokh Monjazeb is our scholar and translator who will be speaking today. He's an independent scholar of Baha'i history and sacred scripture, a published author, a lecturer whose writings and presentations focus on Baha'i Sacred Text and their literary and historical significance in the context of the socio-spiritual condition of human society. He's authored more than a couple of dozen articles on Baha'i history and sacred text, as well as a monograph on Baha'u'lláh entitled Baha'u'lláh, A Brief Survey of His Life and Works. For the Wilmette Institute, he has given a series of webinars which have covered all the tablets Baha'u'lláh wrote to the various kings and rulers. The first series was called God Summons Europe Part 1, and we're now in God Summons Europe Part 2 with at least 3 webinars. Only the first one, however, is public, and that's the one we're going to look at today about Pope Pius IX. The other webinars will finish up the tablet on Pope Pius IX and will explore Baha'u'llah's comments about Franz Joseph, who's the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Kaiser Wilhelm, who was the chancellor of Germany. So we'll be covering those 2 figures in later webinars as well. Shahrokh has also given presentations about various other tablets by Baha'u'lláh and gave us quite a remarkable series of webinars about the Bayan. So without further ado, I will turn all of this over to Shahrokh Monjazeb, and we will hear his presentation. Welcome, Shahrokh. We're really delighted that you can join us today, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stockman, for that introduction. Friends, it's so good to be here. I'm just going to get my screen. Let's begin. Thank you, friends, for joining us today here. And I am delighted to be with you again. This is the 6th part to the series on Baha'u'llah's proclamation to the kings and rulers. This series began in 2016, I believe, with Suratul Muluk, with the Surah of the Kings, which was revealed in 1866. As I had mentioned previously, Baha'u'llah's public proclamation had 3 phases. The seminal phase was in 1866, while he was exiled to the city of Edirne after the Most Great Separation, so sometime in summer of 1866 with the revelation of Suratul Muluk. And then soon after he arrived in Akka in 1868, late 1868, 69. Prior to that, he had sent from Adrianople 1 tablet to Napoleon III, the first tablet, which we spoke about it last time, but his major proclamation to Napoleon and other sovereign heads of state individually in Europe, like Queen Victoria and Tsar Nikolaevich Alexander II, took place in the latter part of 1868, likely in the first quarter of 1869. And then it culminated, as we will see, with the revelation of the Kitab Aqdas, his most holy book, which is rather unusual in the book of laws. I believe Aqdas is more than just a book of laws. The Guardian of the Baha'i Faith says it's the charter of the future world civilization, which encompasses so much. And it is very fascinating to note that almost 20% of the Kitab Aqdas is dedicated to Baha'u'llah's continuance of his public proclamation to the kings and rulers, and the rulers of religion as well in that, but we will get to that. Today, we're going to cover probably half of the Baha'u'llah's only tablet to Pope Pius IX, the head of the Catholic Church. Pope, besides being the leader of Catholicism, he was also a sovereign at the time. There was a papal state, and as we will see, eventually he loses it, or it diminishes in size, and through the Italian national movement. But essentially, he was one of the powerful or significant monarchs at the time of the revelation of Baha'u'llah's summons to the kings and rulers of Europe in 1869, the late 1860s. So there is a reason why he is singled out as being a ruler, because he was also, besides being a spiritual leader and ruler of the largest denomination, if you will, of Christianity, Catholicism, but he was at the same time ruler of property, ruler of domains that were called the papal state, and we will get to that in a few minutes. Pope Pius IX, he lived between 1792 to 1878. Let's look at his life. Let's look at the historical context in which this tablet was revealed, his background. His name was Giovanni Maria Mastai Ferretti. He was born in the Italian port city of Senigallia on the Adriatic coast in 1792. He was the fourth son of Count Girolamo de Conti Ferretti. He was a count. So Giovanni himself was a count as well. Shoghi Effendi refers to him as a count as well. So he was from the nobility. His family was a landowner and member of the regional nobility in Senigallia. As a 22-year-old theological student, Giovanni met Pope Pius VII soon after the latter's release from the French captivity. Pius VII is the famous pope that was invited by great Napoleon for his coronation, and he famously took the crown that the Pope was supposed to crown Napoleon. He took the crown from the Pope and put it on himself. So he basically slighted the Pope. Majority of the papacy of Pius VII was really embroiled in conflicts and political, intrigues back and forth between Napoleon, and he excommunicated Napoleon, and Napoleon also captured the Pope, and and he was imprisoned in France when he had come to visit. I believe he had invited him, and then but he was a theologian and also originally member of a nobility, Italian nobility, very similar to Giovanni, but he left that meeting, the 22-year-old meeting this great sort of papal hero, as he was recognized amongst the Catholics for standing up to Napoleon, so to speak, was left an indelible impression on this young Giovanni Ferretti. And eventually, in the next few years, through the encouragement of actually Pius VII, Giovanni became ordained as a priest. So this meeting with the Holy Father of the Catholic Church left a lasting impression on the young Count Mastai Ferretti. He was ordained a Catholic priest in 1819 and began an eventful and successful career as a cleric. In 1827, he was made Archbishop of Spoleto by Pope Leo XII, and a year later, at the age 36, was moved to a more prestigious Archdiocese of Imola. As an indefatigable pastor and effective prelate, he was elevated to the rank of cardinal by Pope Gregory XVI in 1840. And 6 years later, when Pope Gregory passed away, in the conclave of the cardinals in the 2 days, he was elected Pope as a moderate liberal. So by this time, Cardinal Mastai Ferretti had developed a reputation as a liberal because he advocated administrative changes in the Papal States and sympathized emotionally with Italian national aspirations. So as I said, in 1846, in the conclave of the cardinals, he was elected as a moderate progressive against the reactionary candidate, Cardinal Lambruschini. And Lambruschini sounds like Lamborghini, but Lambruschini, he was noted as the very heavy-handed and ultra-conservative cardinal, and there were elements who wanted him to become a pope, but there were many liberal elements who wanted Mastai Ferretti, Cardinal Mastai Ferretti, to become the pope, and they succeeded. So after his election, he announced himself as Pius IX and immediately declared a political amnesty and granted some practical reforms in the Papal States. He also extended gestures of support to Italian nationalist movement. And this really, started to stir up and encourage many people. In fact, immediately after his papacy, within the first couple of years, he became very popular as a new pope. Everybody had a lot of hopes, and they felt that this new pope was going to liberalize and modernize the papacy and the Holy See. However, the outburst of popularity which had emerged soon after he ascended the papal throne, and his reputation as a liberal due to his timely reforms, soon diminished once he made it clear that the temporal sovereignty of the Holy See was indispensable to its spiritual independence, and that he had no intention of establishing a constitutional state. This obviously was very disappointing to the Italian nationalists. And again, during the European Revolution of 1848, which impacted Italy and the Papal States, he refused to join the war to expel Austria from Italy. And this neutrality was viewed by the nationalists as a betrayal. And from this day onwards, they never forgave him, and they continue to lock horns for the remainder of his papacy, as we will see. And it gets worse. In the ensuing political crisis of 1848, made worse by economic breakdown. The papal state prime minister was assassinated, and the Pope himself, fearing for his own life, had to flee in disguise to Gaeta, south of Naples. So the revolution really impacted the papal states and the papacy. And in his exile, having learned from the distance that the establishment of the Roman Republic on February 9th, 1849, Pius made a strong appeal to all Catholic powers, including France, to assist with the restoration of the papal states. Now, at this time in France, France had a new republic and a new president. Charles Louis Napoleon was the new president of the new republic, the Second Republic, and he is the one who later became Napoleon III. So in response to the papal appeal, France was a heavily Catholic nation. The newly elected president of the Second French Republic sent 8,000 to 10,000 French troops to liberate the papal state and restore the temporal rule of Pope Pius IX. After some minor skirmishes with the Italian nationalists, the French army succeeded in entering Rome on July 3rd, 1849, and reestablishing Holy See's temporal authority over its previous borders. So essentially, the papal authority and the papal state was restored back to its pre-1848 state, if you will. The Pope himself, however, did not return to Rome until the spring of the following year. He appointed a council, a three-man council, which was called the Red Triumvirate, which was very interesting, as three cardinals to basically rule, even though he was the Pope, but to rule the state affairs until he would return. Because remember, as the Pope, he was not only the head of the church, but he was the head of the papal state. So he was a sovereign. Even though the papal state had shrunk over the last century or so through battles, and particularly its Italian grip on the Italian peninsula, if you will, had diminished tremendously, and we will see it was only had lands in central Italy, which encompassed Rome and its surrounding, and a couple of regions as well. But both northern Italy and southern Italy had been united as a part of the by the Italian nationalists as part of this emerging Italian kingdom. But what was holding the kingdom was the papal states. And as you will see, that the Italians were relentless in their pursuit of the land that the Pope and the church controlled. And eventually they succeed in capturing all of that and creating a united Italy. So the Pope didn't return till April of 1850. After this traumatic experience, Pope Pius IX shed his liberal stance completely and became a conservative for the remainder of his papacy. With the help of his anti-liberal Secretary of State, the infamous Cardinal Antonelli, who essentially after the restoration of the papal state in 1849, he remained the Secretary of State almost till the end of the papacy of Pope Pius IX. He actually died 2 years before Pius IX himself. So Pio Nono, as the Italians refer to him and still do, set up a paternalistic regime in the Papal States, which alienated the educated class and further enraged the Italian nationalists. So he was now a conservative element. He had felt that he could not be liberal because the liberals were also included reactionaries that took the liberalism to its extreme left, if you will, and he could not tolerate that. And we will see he actually makes statements and announcements and becomes a part, make it part of the corpus of the Catholic Church in response to liberalism. Now, not giving up on their ambition of unifying all of the Italian peninsula, the Italian nationalists continued their battle for unification with Papal State in the 1850s. Finally, in September of 1860, Italian forces defeated the Papal army on 2 separate battles, and Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia annexed the remaining Papal territories except Latium, which included Rome and its surrounding regions. Essentially, Latium is Rome and suburbs, if you will, just the small region around that, so essentially the rest of Italy had been conquered except Rome. And having done this, Victor Emmanuel declared himself the king of unified Italy. For the next decade, in the 1860s, Rome was protected by a garrison of the French army. But when the Franco-Prussian War broke out in 1870, the French troops were recalled by France, leaving Rome vulnerable to the Italian attack. And seizing this golden opportunity, the Italian kingdom's armed forces invaded Rome on September 20th, 1870, and after a short battle with the Papal army, secured the ancient Roman capital as the new capital of the Kingdom of Italy. So as you can imagine, this was very devastating to the Pope and the Catholic Church. Pio Nono's indignation knew no bounds for losing all of the papal temporal power to the Italian kingdom. Even though Italy gave the Pope the use of Vatican, they denied him sovereignty over this territory. So, and it was not until 1929, under the premiership of Benito Mussolini, that the Treaty of Lateran was signed, in which Italy recognized the sovereignty of the Holy See over a newly created international territorial entity, a city-state, which we have today within Rome, limited to a token territory, which became the Vatican City. So today, what we see today as Vatican and Vatican City as a sovereign nation was the result of this treaty, the 1929 Treaty of Lateran, which was signed by Benito Mussolini and the Pope to have this for Italy to recognize the papal state, if you will, but limited to essentially Vatican. Pius, obviously, after this conquest by the Italians, refused to recognize the new Italian kingdom, which he denounced as an illegitimate creation of revolution. And he was hoping that it could be restored again, like the first time in 1849, but there was no more Napoleon. The whole face of Europe had changed. The new power central power in Europe was now Prussia, that had become Germany, a unified Germany after the Franco-Prussian War. And their chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, was really not amiable towards the Pope and the papacy, and as such ignored any overtures that the Pope made to help restore the papacy back to its original temporal power. So at this time, there was no hope of restoration of papacy's temporal power. So one of the things he did as his reaction, he excommunicated all the Italian nation's leaders, including King Victor Emmanuel II, and rejected any offer of concession made by the Italians to him by the Italian government. Even at that time, they did want to give him the Vatican. They had allowed him to stay there, but he did not want to communicate or concede with them, because doing so, he felt, would legitimize them as the new nation of Italy, which he was against. After the collapse of the Papal Kingdom in 1870, Pio IX chose not to set foot outside the Vatican, declaring himself the prisoner of Vatican. He's famously known as the prisoner of Vatican. Although politically, Pope Pius IX's pontificate was nothing short of a disaster, ecclesiastically, he introduced several Catholic dogmas which have made him theologically one of the most influential popes of the modern era. Three ecclesiastical events stand out in particular, and I will briefly outline them. First, his promulgation in 1854, the dogma of the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, which stipulated that she was born without original sin. This had been debated for centuries within the theological circle of the Catholic Church, but that Mary was immaculate of the original sin, but it never became part of the dogma of the Church until 1854, where Pope Pius IX officially made it so. The second was the publication in 1864 of the papal encyclical. Encyclicals was it's essentially the letters that the Pope would send out to all the bishops, and this particular one, Quanta Cura, in which Pio IX decries and denounces the principal errors of the modern times. In it states that the Pope should not have to, quote, reconcile himself to or agree with progress, liberalism, and modern civilization. And attached to Quanta Cura was a famous appendix known as Syllabus of Errors. And this Syllabus of Errors, this attachment, this appendix, outlines a total of 80 errors, or heresies, if you will, articulating Catholic teachings on a number of philosophical and political questions. Quanta Cura was essentially a condemnation of liberalism, secularization, and separation of church and state. It dealt a fatal blow to liberal Catholicism, and its impact is still being felt today within the Catholic Church. Now, the third and final ecclesiastical event of the papacy of Pius IX was that he convoked the First Vatican Council held in St. Peter's Basilica. which opened on December 8, 1869, and was adjourned on October 20th, 1870, after the capture of Rome by the Italian nationalist forces. Now, for some of you who have studied ecumenical councils of the Catholic Church, this was the 20th ecumenical council, and the 19th one was about 300 years ago, the Council of Trent, which was assembled as a result of Reformation, and its main thrust was to counter Reformation. So it was a council of counter Reformation in the northern Italian city of Trent, which was held back in the 1500s, mid 1500s. So 300 years later, he called this council. The main theme, which you will see of Vatican, which is called Vatican I or Vatican Council I, was the debate and establishment of the dogma of papal infallibility. The Quanta Cura in 1864 obviously had pushed certain boundaries of papal authority when he declared these 80 heresies, these 80 errors. Some question, well, who's the Pope to declare these? You know, I mean, yes, he is the head, but is this coming from God, or is this because something personal with regards to Pius himself? So in a way, it was very important for him to establish this papal infallibility, which then would strengthen his assertions of earlier and later injunctions that he was to prefer to the church. So the papal infallibility that was debated at the First Vatican Council essentially stated that by virtue of the promise made by Jesus to Apostle Peter, the Pope, when occupying the chair of Peter on theological matters, is preserved from committing doctrinal error. It does not, however, and that was where the debate was, it was agreed that that did not, however, mean that the Pope could not sin or otherwise err in most other situations. And so his infallibility was limited in his role as the vicar of Peter. Remember, the popes were originally announced themselves as the vicar of Peter, and it was not until the High Middle Ages and papacy of Pope Innocent III that this whole concept of vicar of Christ emerged. So up to then, they were vicars of Peter, but then Innocent and later medieval popes developed this concept of the vicars of Christ. And today they're recognized as vicars of Christ, even though ultimately they take their representation and inspiration from Apostle Peter. Now, this dogma, believe it or not, is still upheld by the church even today. Although we do not have a definite, now coming back to Bahá'u'llahs now, so essentially, this is a little background about Pope, and it's within this context. And it's very interesting that when Bahá'u'lláh wrote this tablet, the First Vatican Council was starting in 1869. It was actually in September of 1869. It was a rather short councils, because these councils would sometimes go on for years, and they would be breaks in between them. I mean, they wouldn't be continually going on years, but they would, until their full adjournment, they would continue. For example, the Second Vatican Council, which was initiated by Pope John the 23rd, began in 1962 and continued in the papacy of Paul VI, and it was adjourned in 1965. So 3 years, but they were periods of where it was in session for a number of weeks. So, however, with the First Vatican Council, because it started at a time when war broke out, between Italy and the Papal State, and Rome fell, and they had to basically adjourn the council. So the main thing that they could debate was this papal infallibility, which they got done. So it's very interesting to understand within that context that and also you have to understand Pope had lots going on at the time, and then the whole question of, did he actually receive this tablet from Baha'u'lláh? He may have received it through his bureaucratic system, a papal system. Whether he had a chance to read it, it still remains unknown. But it is within that context, historical context, that we should also view this tablet. So looking at the tablet itself, although we do not have a definite date of composition, it is highly likely that Baha'u'lláh penned his summons to the Pope during the same period when he wrote individual letters to influential European monarchs, such as the King of France, Tsar of Russia, and the Queen of England. So the period of composition of this tablet would be sometime in the first half of 1869, with the strong likelihood of it being revealed within the first 3 months of that year. Now, looking at some of the external features of the tablet before we begin looking at the text, Baha'u'llah's tablet to Pope Pius IX is revealed entirely in Arabic. The authorized Baha'i English translation of this tablet is published in the book, The Summons of the Lord of Hosts, from pages 54 to 67, and has been divided into 29 paragraphs. All of paragraphs 1 and 17 and sections of paragraphs 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 to 15, 19, and 25 to 28 were originally rendered into English by Shoghi Effendi and included in his major letter entitled The Promised Days Come. You will see that I will highlight Shoghi Effendi's translation as we go through. All of Shoghi Effendi's translations are highlighted in yellow. The completing translations of the tablet, sections that needed to be completed, which were completed by the Baha'i World Center, are in white. So that's something for you to bear in mind as we move forward. Now, as I said, the remaining sections of the tablet were translated, and so the full tablet was published along with the other tablets in conjunction with Surah Haykal, as what had later been envisioned by Baha'u'lláh, that the tablet to Pope Pius IX, the tablet to the Shah of Iran, the second tablet to Napoleon III, the tablet to Queen Victoria, and the tablet to the Tsar Alexander II were all included in this greater Surah Haykal. But Surah Haykal, if you recall, was revealed initially in Adrianople, but was recast, and these tablets were added to it. Interesting to note that after the main text of the Surah Haykal itself, the first tablet to individual monarchs is actually the tablet to Pope Pius IX. So right after Surah Haykal, you have Pope Pius IX, and that's the way it's been also translated and published in Summons of the Lord of Hosts. Now, looking at this tablet, like always, I like to share with the students and the general public the first line or two from any of Baha'u'llah's tablets, particularly these tablets. As you will see, the style is very consistent, very similar, and the rhythm and the cadence of it is magnificently unique and also consistent. If you recall, for example, the tablet to Tsar Alexander, where we studied in the first part of this series, God Summons Europe Part 1 last year, begins with Anya Malaka Rus and Istama' Nida Allah al-Malik al-Quddus. So Rus and Quddus rhyme. So you will see rhythm patterns and rhyme. So it's prose with a fusion of poetry. So it's an incredible, the revelation is just marvelous. Baha'u'llah's style and the revelation, and particularly his proclamation, the way, so it has a certain majesty besides its content. There is a rhythmic, there is a poetical rhythmic to it as well. So I will read you this section, which has been translated by the beloved Guardian. It goes, Anya Papa, أن أخرق الأحجاب أن أخرق الأحجاب قد أتى رب الأرباب في زلل السحاب وقضي الأمر من لدى الله المقتدر المختار. So here, Ahjab, Arbab, and Sahab are all have the rhyme, in it. So again, I will read it one more time so you can hear it. Anya Papa, an ukhruq al-ahjab, an ukhruq al-ahjab, qad ata rabbul arbab, fi zulal al-sahab, wa wudi al-amr min ladallah al-muqtadir al-mukhtar. And the official translation by Shoghi Effendi, the section that's been underlined here, begins, O Pope, rend the veils asunder. He who is the Lord of Lords is come, overshadowed with clouds, and the decree hath been fulfilled by God, the Almighty, the Unrestrained. Then the paragraph continues, and this is still Shoghi Effendi's translation. Baha'u'llah writes, dispel the mists through the power of thy Lord and ascend unto the kingdom of his names and attributes. Thus hath the pen of the Most High commanded thee at the behest of thy Lord, the Almighty, the All-Compelling. He verily hath again come down from heaven, even as he came down from it the first time. Beware that thou dispute not with him, even as the Pharisees disputed with him without a clear token or proof. This is a reference to the opposition by the Jewish clerical institutions, the Pharisees, against Jesus Christ, that we all know. Baha'u'llah continues, on his right hand flow the living waters of grace, and on his left the choice wine of justice, whilst before him march the angels of paradise, bearing the banners of his signs. Baha'u'llah is painting this amazing picture of this King of Glory, this this return of Christ, basically marching down with the angels and the trumpet and everything, and majesty and pageantry and pomp and circumstance, as is worthy of God's manifestation and the return of Jesus Christ. He continues addressing the Pope by saying, beware lest any name debar thee from God, the creator of earth and heaven, Leave thou the world behind thee and turn towards thy Lord, through whom the whole earth hath been illumined. We have adorned the kingdom with the ornament of our name, the all-glorious. Thus hath it been decreed by God, the fashioner of all things. As you can see, this is now the translation, the completing translation by the Baha'i World Center, which is an authorized Baha'i translation. Baha'u'lláh continues by stating, take heed lest thy vain imaginings withhold thee when once the sun of certitude hath shone forth above the horizon of the utterance of thy Lord, the mighty, the beneficent. Then, again, still addressing the Pope, but this section is also been translated by the beloved guardian and included in Promised Days Come. Baha'u'lláh writes, dwellest thou in palaces, whilst he who is the king of revelation liveth in the most desolate of abodes. Again, this is a reference that Baha'u'lláh is addressing the Pope from his prison cell in the army barracks in Akka. So this was during the time, as we talked about it in the last course, 1869. Baha'u'lláh was still immured in the solitary confinement at the army barracks in this great citadel of Akka. Then Baha'u'lláh continues, leave them. It says, leave these palaces unto such as desire them, and set thy face with joy and delight towards the kingdom. So it's a great challenge. He says that you live in a palace where we, who are God's representative on earth, we are in this pestilential, this penal abode. And, it's shameful for you, essentially, he's saying, for you to be like that and us be mistreated this way. But he says, just leave those, if you're truly sincere, leave them to such as desire them. And he basically says your desire should be, since you are the head of the church and representing and as a vicar of Christ, you should do as what Christ would have done. In the third paragraph, so this was the first two paragraphs, Baha'u'lláh turns his attention and addresses the generality of humanity. As we saw in many of the individual letters, even though they're addressed to a specific individual, Baha'u'lláh also, God chooses to address other groups as well. Because even in the tablet to Napoleon III, for example, there are other addressees as well. So you will see the same way that Baha'u'lláh does address in this. The other thing I want to also point out is that this tablet, I believe, even though it was revealed at the time to Pope Pius IX, I also believe that, yes, it did specifically was addressed to him, but at the same time, it was addressed to all the popes that were to come after Pius as well, because the word of God continues to remain alive and dynamic, and as such, the message continues even today. So this message is also relevant to the current Pope Francis as well, and the previous popes since Pius IX. But in the third paragraph, Baha'u'lláh is addressing the generality of humanity, and he writes, "Say, O peoples of the earth, destroy the abodes of negligence with the hands of power and assurance, and raise up the mansions of true knowledge within your hearts, that the All-Merciful may shed the radiance of his light upon them. Better is this for you than all whereon the sun shineth, and unto this beareth witness he who holdeth within his grasp the ultimate decree. The breeze of God, Baha'u'lláh continues, hath been wafted over the world at the advent of the desired one in his great glory, whereupon every stone and clod of earth hath cried out, the promised one is come, the kingdom is God's, the mighty, the gracious, the forgiving. Wow, an incredible apostrophe here. In paragraph 4, Baha'u'lláh turns to the pontiff and exclaims, beware lest human learning debar thee from him who's the supreme object of all knowledge, or lest the world deter thee from the one who created it and set it upon its course. He beckons the Pope by saying, arise in the name of thy Lord, the God of mercy, amidst the peoples of the earth, and seize thou the cup of life with the hands of confidence. First, drink thou therefrom, and proffer it then to such as turn towards it amongst the peoples of all faiths. So he places a great responsibility on the Pope here. First, he says, you know, you should arise. You are, if you are the representative of God, here now God is summoning you, telling you, okay, now you must do my bidding. First, you got to drink it yourself, drink this cup, and then give it to others. And not just your flock, not just your congregation, namely the Catholics, but to followers of all faiths. Thus, Baha'u'lláh says, hath the moon of utterance risen above the horizon of wisdom and understanding. He continues by saying, tear asunder the veils of human learning, lest they hinder thee from him who is my name, the self-subsisting. This has been echoed in all of Baha'u'llah's proclamation to young and old, to powerful and weak, to all walks of life. He challenges humanity in general, saying that don't let human learning, you know, prevent you from that. Don't think that you're smart, or more smart or smarter than what I am sharing with you, because that you will be in grave error if you did judge this with with your human learning, because this far transcends that. Then he reminds the Pope, he says, call thou to remembrance him who was the Spirit, Jesus, who when he came, the most learned of his age pronounced judgment against him in his own country, whilst he who was only a fisherman, reference to Apostle Peter, believed in him. So he says, the learning can be, Baha'u'lláh in the Kitab-i-Iran, the Book of Certitude, says learning can be most grievous veil. So in this case, he's echoing that sentiment, that don't let your learning prevent you, and don't let history repeat itself. Remember what happened at the time of Jesus? Don't let it happen now. He continues, take heed then, ye men of understanding heart, which he includes the Pope as well as others as well. Thou in truth, again, referring to the Pope, art one of the sons of the heaven of his names, one of the sons. Guard thyself lest darkness spread its veils over thee and fold thee away from his light. So he says, be careful not to let the darkness of self and your ego and your ignorance conquer you. Ponder then that which hath been sent down in the book by thy Lord, the Almighty, the All-Bountiful. In paragraphs 6 through 9, Baha'u'lláh addresses all the clergies from every religion throughout the world. He writes, say, still your pens, O concourse of divines. For lo, the shrill voice of the pen of glory hath been lifted up between earth and heaven. Cast away all that ye possess, and take fast hold of that which we have revealed unto you with power and authority. He continues, the hour that was concealed within the knowledge of God has struck, whereupon all the atoms of the earth have proclaimed the Ancient of Days is come in his great glory. Hasten unto him, O peoples of the earth, with humble and contrite hearts. Say, we in truth have given ourselves as a ransom for your own lives. Alas, when we came once again, we beheld you fleeing from us, whereat the eye of my loving kindness wept sore over my people. Fear God, O ye that perceive. Then Baha'u'lláh continues in paragraph 7, and this section has been translated by the beloved guardian. It says, consider those who oppose the Son, again, reference to Jesus, when he came unto them with sovereignty and power. How many the Pharisees who were waiting to behold him and were lamenting over their separation from him. And yet when the fragrance of his coming was wafted over them and his beauty was unveiled, they turned aside from him and disputed with him. Thus do we impart unto thee that which hath been recorded in the books and scriptures. There is a minor variation. It should be, I believe, thus do we impart unto you. However, there are different versions of this, in the original, but which needs to be explored. But in this version, it's thee, but Baha'u'lláh is addressing a group, so it would make more sense that is for it to be more plural as opposed to singular, but it can be explored. So I put that in square brackets. So just in case, as you're reading it, you're finding that there's a difference in the singularity and the plurality of the statement. Again, he continues, none save a very few who were destitute of any power amongst men turned towards his face. And yet today, every man endowed with power and invested with sovereignty prides himself on his name. In like manner, consider how numerous in these days are the monks who in my name have secluded themselves in their churches, and who, when the appointed time was fulfilled, and when we unveiled our beauty, knew us not, though they call upon me at eventide and at dawn. We behold, Baha'u'lláh continues, them, these monks, clinging to my name, yet veiled from myself. This verily is a strange thing. I found this statement by Bahá'u'lláh quite amusing and rather sad, of course. But the fact that he says, you know, they're clinging to my name and yet they're veiled from it. You know, I'm here. They keep asking, they're praying for my appearance, and when I appear. He also addressed very similarly many of the Shia Muslims with regards to the coming of the Bab and the Qaim of the House of Muhammad. He says, for 1200 years plus, you invoked his name, but when he arrived, you crucified him. I believe he says that in also there, he echoes that in the tablet to the Shah of Iran as well. Baha'u'lláh continues by stating, say, take heed lest your devotions withhold you from him who is the object of all devotions. Again, this is all the divines, right? Or your worship debar you from him who is the object of all worship. Rend asunder the veils of your idle fancies. This is your Lord, the Almighty, the All-Knowing, who hath come to quicken the world and unite all who dwell on earth. I mean, you can't get any clearer than this. This is truly a unveiled proclamation by Baha'u'lláh. This is your Lord, the Almighty, the All-Knowing, who hath come to quicken the world and unite all who dwell on earth. Turn unto the dayspring of revelation, the manifestation of God, O people, and tarry not, be it for less than the twinkling of an eye. Then Baha'u'lláh continues, read ye the Evangel, the Bible, the New Testament, and yet, or the Gospels, if you will, read ye the Evangel and yet refuse to acknowledge the all-glorious Lord. This indeed beseemeth you not, O concourse of the learned men. So he's talking about the divines, but also the learned, and they are considered to be learned, but yet he says, you read that, and you still refuse to acknowledge or understand. Say, if ye deny this revelation, by what proof have ye believed in God? Produce it then. Thus hath the summons of God been sent down by the pen of the Most High at the bidding of your Lord, the most glorious. This part, it sounds very similar for some of you, section on the tablet of Ahmad. If ye deny this revelation, if ye deny these verses, by what proof have ye believed in God? I think this is, if ye deny this revelation, by what proof have ye believed in God? Produce it then, in the tablet, produce it, O assemblage of false ones, I believe, he says. Thus hath the summons of God been sent down by the pen of the Most High at the bidding of your Lord, the most glorious, in this tablet, from whose horizon the splendor of his light hath shone forth. How many, Baha'u'lláh continues, are my servants, whose deeds have become veils between them and their own selves, and who have been kept back thereby from drawing nigh unto God, he who causeth the winds to blow. Then in paragraph 10 and 11, Baha'u'lláh addresses all the monks. He was referring to them, but now he directly addresses them. And he, not only the Christian monks, but all the ascetics, all the sort of mendicants, if you will, or the monks of all religions. He exclaims, O concourse of monks, the fragrance of the All-Merciful have wafted over all creation. Happy the man that hath forsaken his desires and taken fast hold of guidance. He indeed is of those who have attained unto the presence of God in this day, a day whereon Commotions have seized the dwellers of the earth and filled with dismay all save those who have been exempted by God, he who layeth low the necks of men. Adorn ye your bodies whilst the raiment of God is stained with the blood. This is a question. It says, adorn your bodies. You adorn your bodies whilst the raiment of God is stained with the blood of hatred and the hands of the people of denial. Issue forth from your habitations and bid the people enter the kingdom of God, the Lord of the day of judgment. Then he continues and referring to the words of Jesus, he says, the word which the Son concealed is made manifest. Remember, he says, I believe he says, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he says, there's many things that I would like to share with you. I'm paraphrasing. But I will, I'm not going to, or at this point, again, I don't know the exact quote, but he says that when I return, I shall disclose it to you. So here, Baha'u'lláh says, the word which the Son concealed is now made manifest. It hath been sent down in the form of the human temple in this day. So he says, I am that human temple, the word made flesh. Again, this is has a theological significance as well. Blessed be the Lord, who is the Father. He verily is come unto the nations in his most great majesty. Jesus says, I shall return in the glory of my Father. Okay. Blessed be the Lord, who is the Father. He verily is come unto the nations in his most great majesty. Turn your faces towards him, O concourse of the righteous. In paragraph 12 through 16, and we're going to end with paragraph 16, which is almost the halfway point of the tablet. I know we're running a bit later than we should have, but I will get through this hopefully in the next few minutes. In paragraph 12 through 16, Baha'u'lláh addresses the followers of all religions now. Okay, so again, he has addressed the Pope, he has addressed the monks, he has addressed the divines of all religion, he's addressed the generality of mankind, but now he is addressing the followers of all religions. So there's a certain universality within Baha'u'llah's message. There is a certain specificity, but there's a certain universality as well, even in his proclamation. So he proclaims, O followers of all religions, we behold you wandering distraught in the wilderness of error. I mean, then he gives a wonderful analogy here. Ye are the fish of this ocean. Wherefore do ye withhold yourselves from that which sustaineth you? It's like you're a fish out of water. I am the water of your spiritual life, but you are wandering. I mean, again, the message. People are wandering in the paths of delusion, bereft of discernment to see God with their own eyes or hear his melodies with their own ears. In the tablet of Ahmad, this is being echoed here again. O followers of all religion, we behold you wandering distraught in the wilderness of error. And the people today are very distraught. You see that. Everyone is, especially in the last couple of years, everybody is distraught. Everybody is beside themselves. They don't know. And they're anxious, Ye are the fish of this ocean. Wherefore do ye withhold yourselves from that which sustaineth you? Lo, it surgeth before your faces. hasten unto it from every clime. Then this section was translated by the beloved guardian. This is the day, Baha'u'lláh continues, whereon the rock, Peter, crieth out and shouteth and celebrateth the praise of its Lord, the all-possessing, the Most High, saying, Lo, the Father is come, and that which ye were promised in the kingdom is fulfilled. This is the word which was preserved behind the veils of grandeur, and which, when the promise came to pass, shed its radiance from the horizon of the divine will with clear tokens. My body hath borne imprisonment, Baha'u'lláh continues, that your souls may be released from bondage. And we have consented to be abased, that ye may be exalted. Follow the Lord of glory and dominion, and not every ungodly oppressor. Followers of religion, do not follow every ungodly and oppressor. I think some of you know how this is relevant today in a certain nation or nations. My body, Baha'u'lláh continues, longeth for the cross, and mine head awaiteth the thrust of the spear in the path of the All-Merciful, that the world may be purged from its transgressions. This is a reference for some of you who may not recognize it immediately. Obviously, the cross is a reference to Jesus' crucifixion, but the thrust of the spear was basically the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the Prince of Martyrs, who was decapitated, and his head was put on a spear and a spike and was taken to Damascus by the armies of the Umayyads. Thus hath the day star of divine authority shone forth from the horizon of the revelation of him who's the possessor of all names and attributes. In paragraph 14, Baha'u'lláh bemoans the mistreatment and oppression heaped upon him by Muslims. So he is addressing the followers of all religions, but now he is complaining to them of the mistreatment and the oppression that he has faced at the hands of the Muslims, both Shia and Sunni at that time. He writes, the people of the Quran have risen against us and tormented us with such a torment that the Holy Spirit lamented, and the thunder roared out, and the clouds wept over us. Among the faithless is he who hath imagined that calamities can deter Baha from fulfilling that which God, the creator of all things, hath purposed. Say, nay by him who causeth the rain to fall. Nothing whatsoever can withhold him from the remembrance of his Lord. Just a side note here, among the faithless is he who hath imagined that calamities can deter Baha from fulfilling that which God, the creator of all things, hath purposed. This could be several individuals. It could be Ali Pasha, it could be Fuad Pasha, it could be some of the, Persian ambassador. It could be also some of the Azalis, namely Sayyid Muhammad Isfahani, okay? who was the chief lieutenant of Yahya Azad. So there is no specific identification here, but it's a veiled reference, and it could be to many individuals, and it could be also to a specific individual. So, but again, because there were many, unfortunately, who wished ill, I imagine it could be a reference to the Sayyid Muhammad Isfahani, because at this time, the machinations of his small group that had been exiled with Baha'u'llah's followers to Akka was reaching its zenith, if you will, and it was causing so much grief for the beleaguered exiles, and was making things worse for them. So in a way, I think this could be, again, it's not for certain, but it could be a reference by Baha'u'llah to, and again, the faithless, and also the being that it was happening to him as he wrote this, in 1869. By the righteousness of God, should they cast him into a fire kindled on the continent, he will assuredly rear his head in the midmost heart of the ocean and proclaim, he is the Lord of all that are in heaven and all that are on earth. This is very famous. We have come across this, and there's a section which is the one that we know the most, because the Guardian translated it. And if they cast him into a darksome pit, they will find him seated on earth's loftiest heights, calling aloud to all mankind, lo, the desire of the world is come in his majesty, his sovereignty, his transcendent dominion. And if he be buried beneath the depths of the earth, his spirit soaring to the apex of heaven shall peal the summons. Behold ye the coming of the glory. Witness ye the kingdom of God, the most holy, the gracious, the all-powerful. Now, this section was translated by Shovi Effendi in the World Order of Baha'u'llah. The other sections were mainly from Promised Days Come, or at least were quoted in Promised Days Come. And if they shed his blood, meaning the blood of Baha'u'llah, every drop thereof shall cry out and invoke God in this name, through which the fragrance of his raiment hath been diffused in all directions. Though threatened by swords of our enemies, we summon all mankind unto God, the fashioner of earth and heaven, and we render him such aid as can be hindered by neither the hosts of tyranny nor the ascendancy of the people of iniquity. In the second half of paragraph 16, Baha'u'llah addresses the entire human race again. He states, say, O peoples of the earth, scatter the idols of your vain imaginings in the name of your Lord, the all-glorious, the all-knowing, and turn ye unto him in this day which God hath made, the King of days. So that ends the first part of this tablet. We shall continue the remainder of the tablet in the next webinar in 2 weeks.